Good to see everybody again. Nice job on qualitative and quantitative approaches. Let me just show you a little, I don't know, slideshow to give more detail about mixing them. Very good comments so far as I'm going through all of your work and your postings. I had things like the mixed method part you mentioned. There's not one approach that is better than the other. That's excellent. The themes, some of you thought qualitative was a good way to go to evaluate the course. Some said quantitative might be a mix, I would say, once again. Then some of you mentioned that, it's important, of course, get the student viewpoints and ratings and scores, but you also want to look at the professor and TA's perspective too, to get all of that pulled together. And then data collection approaches. I like the addition of the in-class discussion and open discussion. Ethics, very nice, because it's an important part for qualitative and quantitative approaches. Thanks for mentioning IRB. I like some of your phrasing. Perspectives of participants tend to shine through their ideas and concepts when you're doing interviews and observation. Anyway, I like that you also have the phrase of get exact measures or subtle insights. Anyway, I'll send this all to you in more detail. What I'd like to do for a moment is to just share some slides with you and a little bit of talk about qualitative and quantitative approaches. So give me a second. Here we go. Okay. And this is with a former student of mine, Chris Kim. But let me just highlight briefly a couple of points about qualitative and quantitative approaches, since we're at this stage of the game in the course. Bum bum. Bring this over like this. Let me give you an example. I was studying these schools for dropouts. The U.S. Department of Education was paying for us to evaluate all these programs throughout the United States. These were kids who have dropped out of the school, and we're trying to bring them back into a program designed for them to get, graduate and maybe get a career, et cetera. Well, I got a call in the middle of the project from the Department of Labor, Department of Education, saying, we have to shut the programs down. And I said, why? I said, we're getting 60% attendance in the schools for dropouts. And we have 80% attendance in the public schools. So we're basically wasting taxpayer dollars. So once again, we're gonna have to shut the program down. I said, give me just a little bit of time, not much, just give me an hour, maybe 2 hours. I thought about it, and I went through my notes and that sort of thing. So I can appreciate the concern. We don't want to waste, taxpayer money, and we are trying to do something correct, improve their lives and that sort of thing. And then I figured out, wait a minute, let's put some context to the figures. If you qualify the quantitative data, then you suddenly realize the dropouts, when they were in the public school, were not attending. So the baseline is 0. So if they're attending 60% of the dropout programs for them, that's 60% more than 0. And thus, we shouldn't shut the program down. And luckily, Department of Labor, Department of Education, listened and appreciated the qualitative contextualization of the quantitative information. So you'd be interested at this point that what we're focusing on is how you can combine these things and how they can make them work together, and how sometimes you need to. Let me give one more example. Had to do with math scores. The quantitative part of the evaluation was looking at the math scores and the reading scores throughout the year. And the qualitative part I was doing at the time was actually just observing the classrooms and writing down what I saw, how they interacted with the teachers, whether they attended, that sort of thing. So the person that was responsible, happened to be the president of the corporation, was looking at the math scores. He's a psychometrician. And he said he couldn't figure out, why are the math scores dropping so dramatically between January and March? And he looked at this and he looked at that calculation, looked at everything you could think of, and then came to my office and said, David, can you explain what this is? We have no idea why the scores are going down suddenly, because they were doing very well before. So I went through all my notes and all my observation notes. I kept track of all the different schools and all the different classes I went to. And sure enough, I could answer that question. There was no math teacher. not shocking, but you see how important it is to have the qualitative information of observation, interviewing, that sort of thing, to be able to put the, in this case, math scores into perspective and explain. So it wasn't that the math was being taught poorly, that the kids couldn't get it. They were missing an important part of the puzzle. Anyway, I just wanted to highlight how qualitative and quantitative approaches can work together since we're at that juncture in the course. I hope you find this useful. And Chris is a former student of mine, and we work together on putting this together.